listening to. I say you are listening to. You are absolutely listening to the George Espinlove Show, coming to you live from the Funny Farm. Now, with no further ado, here comes Georgie.
Hubba, 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 hubba. I love it, I love it, I love it. Do it some more. Oh, my goodness. Don't you just love that Funny Farm Radio studio audience? Don't you just love it? I mean, it is fantastic. Hey, we all know that this is Friday night, and you know how things get around here on Friday night. We never know what's going to happen. Monday through Thursday, we don't really know what's going to happen. But Friday, it just seems like that cloud of insanity all of a sudden falls down upon us, and we're off. To you that's down the street, around the corner, across this great nation, and around the world, I thank you for tuning in to the George Espinlove Show that comes to you live Monday through Friday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, live from the Funny Farm in a place called Our World. We have no idea where that is. We don't have no specific mailing address. We don't have a mailbox, but we do have an email address. George C.E. That's George C.E. at Comcast.net. George C.E. at Comcast.net. And thank you for all the emails that we're receiving. We'll answer each and every one of them. Keep them coming. And yes, you can write 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of them if you want to. Just keep them coming. George C.E. at Comcast.net. I need to make this announcement. Our guest last night, Lou Ann Hunt, who was scheduled to be with us, and because of one of those circumstances beyond her control, she was not able to be with us. She was not even able to contact us to tell us that she would not be able to be with us. Where she lives, she had a complete, full-blown power outage. No nothing, and no way to contact us. She is so sorry, and she called me this afternoon and we talked. She is so sorry that she couldn't make it. But you know, folks, sometimes those things happen, and we have no control over them. So Monday night, Lou Ann Hunt will be with us at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time right here on the George Espinlove Show. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight, something that is near and dear to my heart, and you all know it. We are going to have, in fact, he is ready to come on the air. Let me get this doodad hooked up here. He is ready to come on the air. And this is one of the most sobering shows that I've ever done. We have with us tonight Colonel Lee Ellis, retired Air Force, a man who was shot down over North Viet Nam and spent 5 years in captivity. He is with us tonight. He is my hero, and I thank him for being here. Colonel Ellis, thank you for being here, and God bless you.
God bless you, and thank you, George. Good to be with you.
I just want to say 2 things. Welcome home, my brother, and thank you for your service.
Well, thank you. And, George, I know you're a Vietnam veteran from the Marine Corps, so thank you for your service and welcome home.
I always tell people, I've had people over the years, and you probably have too, say, why do you guys and girls say that to each other, welcome home? And I just give them the simple answer. When we came home, nobody welcomed us. So somebody within the ranks just took it upon ourselves to welcome each other home, and we've been doing it ever since.
Yeah, it's a good way to handle it, I think.
This is. I told the audience before we hit your button there that this is one of the things that is most near and dear to my heart. Men and women that have served and that are serving today, regardless of the branch of service, are my heroes. Not sports people, not celebrities. The men and women that serve in our armed forces and protect our country are my heroes. And you, sir, are one of them.
Well, I appreciate that. We don't think ourselves that way. We just try to do our duty every day and make it home and serve with honor,
Yes, sir. Could you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure.
When you went into the Air Force and so on and so forth?
Well, I'd always wanted to fly since I was a little kid, and so the Air Force kind of appealed to me. So in college, I got in Air Force ROTC, and 3 days after I graduated, I went to flight school. That was in July of 1965. Went down to Valdosta, Georgia. 53 weeks later, I had my wings and an assignment to the F-4C Phantom fighter bomber, and the assignment said F-4C Phantom Pipeline, Southeast Asia, which meant as quick as they could get me combat trained, I was headed over to the war. And so from the fall of 66 through the spring of 67, I got my combat crew training out in the desert of California, high desert near Edwards Air Force Base at Victorville, California, which was some great flying area out there in the desert between there and the Sierras and Nevada and out through there. And then in May and June of 67, we got our orders and headed over to Vietnam, and I went to Da Nang. I got there the first week of July, 1967, and started flying combat missions a couple of days later. By November the 7th of 67, I had 53 combat missions over the north and another 20 or 25 over South Vietnam and Laos. So I was over halfway through my tour. I was getting pretty experienced in flying combat, and we'd lost a good many people, but we always believed it wouldn't happen to us. So that's kind of how I got in there.
I have always wanted to thank the men and women, or the men that flew those machines, because there was a lot of times. I mean, there was buku times that we had to call, and they come a running, and
Yeah.
we were always glad to see them arrive,
Right.
and they never left us down, and I think it's just fantastic. You have written a book called Leading with Honor, and you gained the experience and you gained the subject matter that's in your book while you were in captivity. Is that correct?
Yeah. The thrust of the book is stories from the POW camps, but the lessons I learned about life and leadership there were what I tried to capture in the book to be the lessons that came out of those stories. So there's 14 chapters in the book and 14 lessons. So each chapter has, maybe half the chapter is stories from the POW camp, and then we kind of clarify the lesson and then show how that lesson applies in today's workplace or today's life experience and make it relevant. So, and we've had a lot of feedback that people, they really do connect, and it's helping them right where they are today. And as a leadership coach and consultant for 15 years now, I've been using these lessons with my clients. First of all, they helped me I came home 6 years behind my peers, 6 years behind in operational flying experience and leadership experience because I've been the junior ranking guy in the camp. So these lessons really helped me to catch up and keep up, and in many ways get ahead of my peers after being gone for 6 years. So I knew they worked, and then I've been able to use them with leaders in mainly the business sector, but somewhat in the military too.
You know, I've often wondered, and when I knew you was coming on the show, when you're so gracious to say you'd come on, I wrote this down. First thing I wrote down, because I've had this question on my mind for years. I and the other grunts on the ground, we knew what the sounds of war were like, the smell, the terror, the feelings. I have always wondered what it was like for you to fly your missions and what it was like to fight in combat from the air.
Well, being in that machine strapped in and flying at speeds of 400 to 500 miles an hour is so much different than being on the ground like you were, because you're up above, so you can see a lot in the macro scale and the big scale. You don't see is what's down in the weeds quite very well. And so a lot of times we were looking for trucks that had pulled off the road and hiding in the trees. So we don't see that very well. We could see them going down the road usually, because we'd be low enough to see that. And then, I think it's similar but different. We would know we were being shot at a lot of times, and sometimes we'd come home with a hole in the wing or something like that. But we don't hear the gunshots. We don't see anybody dying. So in some ways, it's a very sterile environment. It's a pretty high-risk environment because you're flying at fast speeds, low to the ground a lot of times, getting shot at and maneuvering sometimes to come back around and make another pass. And, you don't want to get caught in your own bombs, and you don't want to get hit by the enemy, and you don't want to stall your airplane out trying to turn too hard. So it's a pretty challenging skill, but on the other hand, we're pretty well trained for it. So it's like anything else, I guess there are times of boredom and times of stark terror, you might say. At least your blood pressure goes up, your heartbeat picks up, and you kind of just focus on doing what you're trained to do as a professional, just like you would be on the ground trying to do what you've been trained to do.
Did you say you flew 55 missions before you were shot down?
Yeah, I was on my 54th over North Viet Nam, and then I had another 20 to 25 that were close air support in South Vietnam or trail interdiction over in Laos.
When, so it was 1968 when you got shot down?
No, actually it was the fall of 67.
67.
I started flying combat in July 67, and then by November I was halfway through my tour. The rule was you stayed in the combat zone for a year or until you got 100 missions over North Vietnam, because somebody figured it out that if you did 100 missions over North Vietnam, you had cheated death enough and it was time to go home.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The day that you were shot down, what does it feel like when you got hit? You got hit with a ground air missile or anti-aircraft fire? Do you really know?
Well, it wasn't a missile. There was a lot of anti-aircraft fire there coming up at us, so more than likely that's what it was, because we saw a lot of flak and tracers both as we were coming down the chute on our bombing run. And right after the bombs came off, the airplane kind of shuddered and shook and blew into several pieces, and we were tumbling through the air. Stick was frozen back and right in the cockpit there, and the smoke in the cockpit just wasn't flying. It wasn't a flying machine at all anymore. It's just a tumbling piece of metal. It sounded like it was It sounded like marbles in a blender. That's what it sounded like to me in the airplane. It didn't sound good, so I knew that it wasn't flying, so I had to get out before we hit the ground. So I pulled the ejection lever, and everything worked as advertised. And I was fortunate I didn't have any bad injuries from just going out of the airplane tumbling around like that. A lot of guys did get pretty, broken arms, broken legs, broken jaws going out of the airplane, hitting the rails, and because they weren't in a controlled flight situation.
Mm-hmm. Was there two people that worked your jet, or was it just you?
No, there was two, and I was the junior pilot in the back seat. At that time, the Air Force had pilots in the front seat and the back seat. Later, they put navigators and radar navigator type guys in the back seat instead of pilots. But at that time, they had pilots there.
When you, no, go ahead.
We both got out.
And your flying machine was no more good.
That's right. It wasn't any good anymore. So.
When you finally popped your chute, or your chute opened by itself, or however it opened,
right,
and you were on your way down, were you captured immediately, or did you have a chance to evade somewhat?
Almost immediately. My partner in the airplane, Captain Ken Fisher, who was in the front seat, I was first lieutenant, fairly new first lieutenant, but the gunners on the ground actually caught him. There was a lot of shooting going on. They were shooting at our wingman and then also at this F-100 Mystifac that was flying with us that day. So there's a lot of shooting going on when I was coming down my parachute. I actually did get to make a parachute landing fall the way I was taught, and it worked out well. All my equipment worked well, and it was amazing how I remembered to execute my training. I disconnected my parachute, and there was an old bomb shelter about 3 feet deep there, and I jumped down in that, not a bomb shelter, but a bomb crater, and we were on the just north of a river, maybe 300 yards north of the river, and a floodplain there, and bushes maybe waist high or a little bit higher. Anyway, I disconnected my parachute, jumped into this little bomb crater, and pulled out my radio, and I called the wingman and told him I was on the ground and that they were all around me, but mostly to the north, and I was going to head south to the river, try to get in that river because it was only 1.5 miles to the Gulf, and that if they would start strafing at about 400 meters, that'd be about right, and I would head south. I saw the guys after the war at a reunion. They said, we heard your call asking for strafing, but we couldn't strafe. We're afraid we wouldn't be that accurate, so we didn't want to take a chance and hit you. So immediately, as right after I got that radio transmission out, the heads started popping up around these bushes, and the militia were maybe 20 yards away, and they continued to close in. And I pulled out my .38 revolver, and I thought, well, I'll just scare these dudes away. So I fired around the tracer right over their head, and they did not blink and didn't move except take closer aim on my helmet. So I decided, one of the guys had a pointy-talkie, which is like a little pocket-sized comic book, but it had drawings of a militia guy capturing an American pilot on one side of the page, and on the other side, it had phonetics so that he could actually say English, but in Vietnamese phonetics. And so this guy pulled that thing out and started yelling, hands up, surrender, no die, surrender, no die. And I decided that's probably the best advice I was going to get that day, and I just put my hands up, dropped my .38. That's pretty bad. I was doing fine until that point. And then, once I surrendered, they came in and started ripping all my stuff off of me and stripped me down to my jockey shorts. And I guess that's about the time I knew I was in trouble. Your worst nightmare. Personal nightmare, professional nightmare, all in one.
The cover of your book, tell us about that. Well,
I can't take it's a powerful cover, and we've had so many good comments on it. It's won a first place and a second prize award this year or last year when it came out last summer for cover of the year in its category. But it shows 2 feet. One of them is barefoot, scratched up and cut up from being barefooted and running through the jungles and the vines and that sort of thing. And the other one shows a foot that's dressed in a nice, you can see the cuff on a nice suit and nice dress shoes and all spiffy up and looking good. And it really portrays a contrast. It portrays a lot of things. It was just such a brilliant idea that the graphic artist and creative guy came up with for that book cover. But it shows that, one, what our feet were like, because they took our boots away and blindfolded us and tied our hands and put a rope around our neck and led us like a dog, through the countryside. So our feet got cut up really bad. They got infected because we didn't have any shoes during that time, and all of us got to Hanoi with infected feet. So it represents that. It also represents a transition, back to that we eventually made into the good life and a different profession eventually after my flying days were over. But I think more than anything, to me, it represents the sacrifice that's needed to lead with honor.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's, it's a sacrifice. I don't care how you cut it. It's a sacrifice to do your duty in difficult times and to be an honorable person at all times. That you have to give up something. You have to sacrifice. And it's painful sometimes. But in the end, you make it through, and then your reputation and your own person is dressed up more. It's a different quality, and I think that's what that picture represents.
I heard you say, and it was so powerful, that you have to lean into the pain.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's not the words verbatim, but kind of paraphrase. Explain that to us.
Well, we're faced with situations all the time, little ones and big ones and medium-sized ones too, where there's a situation where we know what we ought to do, but we put it off. We don't deal with it. And sometimes we even tell white lies to get out of doing it. Sometimes we avoid it altogether. Sometimes people cheat to avoid pain because they're afraid. We had a situation here in Atlanta, and evidently it's happening in most major cities, where teachers are actually cheating on the standardized tests for their students. The students turn in the test. The teachers grade them. If the grades don't come out good enough, the teachers change the grades for them so the teachers will look better on the standardized test.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of thing is going on in all levels of our society, whether it's business or people that keep the books are stealing money, or just whatever. In the religious area, in every area, we had the general who was guilty of sexual crimes and assault here that came out just a few months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So we have all this stuff going on. And so what I've come to understand is that you have to lean into the pain of your fear if you're going to do the right thing. Because we all have fear, and it will feel like, oh, that'll be painful if I do the right thing, and people will laugh at me, or people won't like me, or, I'll stand out, or whatever. But when it comes down to it, if you know it's the right thing, you just got to lean into your pain of your fear and just go do it. And when you do that, you're always blessed in the long run. In the short run, it's painful. In the long run, you always come out ahead, and you can be proud of yourself because you've done the honorable thing. You've done your duty. You've done your responsibility. You've told the truth. You've done your very best to be your profession and your ethics, and the golden rule, the law that we have, what your mom and dad taught you, what they taught you at church and school. I mean, we know what's right.
Mm-hmm.
So doing what's right is what's sometimes hard.
Number one, the book cover is powerful. And number two, I need to inject right here, ladies and gentlemen, you can get the book, Leading with Honor, at Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can get it at your website, too, can't you, Colonel? freedomstarmedia.com.
Yeah, you can get it there. And if you just want to learn more about it, you probably have more information about the book there. In fact, you can get a free download of the foreword by John McCain, the introduction by me, and the table of contents in Chapter 1. You can download all that for free. And there's some audio and some videotape on there where I talk about the book and answer different questions about it. So you can learn a lot about it there on Freedom Star Media. And if you want to then buy it on Amazon or whatever, that makes us happy, because those numbers are good for us and we get a cut out of that. So it's all good.
Leading with Honor. Tremendous. After they captured you, what did they do with you? Did they have a camp nearby where they took you, or did they just parade you through the jungle with them?
Well, interestingly enough, I don't think they knew exactly. They knew they were supposed to capture me, but it took them a while to figure out what they were supposed to do with me. And for about 5 minutes, I was moved into a bomb shelter. They gave me my flight suit back, but no shoes. Blindfolded me, hands are tied, and had the rope around my neck. And they moved me to a bomb shelter, and my buddy Ken Fisher was in there. Was in there, and we just checked in with each other and found out we were both okay. And then they moved me back out, and they moved me by some hamlets. I could tell we're passing some hamlets and so on, across the rice paddy to another little hamlet, little village. And then they tied me down to some boards where I really couldn't move much, and just left me there by the time I got there, it was dark. They came back in a little while later and gave me a bowl of rice with a little fish on top about the size of a goldfish, and some peanut sauce on it, I think. And I ate that and drank some water. Then they tied me back up and left me until morning. And by the next morning, I was stiffer than the board, I think, because the ejection just put 18 G's on my spine and my neck and my whole body. So it's like you'd been in a bad car wreck, basically. And I had some cuts and bruises on me. The next day, they moved me over to another place and kept me there during the day, and moved me back that night into a ditch. It was kind of like a bomb shelter. Tied up some boards, and between the guards, and the mosquitoes were eating us all up. We didn't have a mosquito net, and I couldn't swat the mosquitoes, and they were kind of cussing and swatting mosquitoes all night, but they were there with me, guarding me. So 2 or 3 days this went on, and then we had some bad weather, and they moved me into an underground house built into the sand dunes on the back of the beach, and tied up and stayed in there for a couple of days till all the rain passed through. And then we finally went down to a truck park and got on a truck and started heading north, and it took me about 4 days to get up to then, where there was a bamboo camp, kind of a holding gathering point for POWs, and there were 2 Marines there, plus a Marine F4 crew, and then plus Ken Fisher, my front seater. So I rejoined them, and we stayed there I stayed there 2 days. Some of them had been there a couple of weeks. Ken had been there several days. He got there before me, and then I was there 2 nights, and then we headed out for Hanoi. And it took us about 3 days and nights then to get to Hanoi.
Did they keep you blindfolded the whole time?
Yeah, they tried to. I was always pushing it up and trying to see out underneath my blindfold, and sometimes I could. in the back of the truck, you couldn't see anything much because it was covered with a tarp, like an army truck covered with a tarp. But before the trip, until I got to the bamboo camp, they actually put me in the front seat some. Some reason I think they thought it was safer because they took the door handle off inside the door handle there, and they had guards in the back of the truck, and one, I guess probably a staff sergeant in charge of me, and then the truck driver. And so I was in the front seat of that truck, which not many people got this kind of ride. It was a special deal, I tell you. And so I would kind of keep pushing on my, they actually used my handkerchief for a blindfold. And I keep pushing until I get it out and I could see out. And then eventually we'd pass some bombed out trucks and they'd reach over and slap me and pull my blindfold back down. And we'd go on for a while, and after a while I'd have it back up again, and they'd offer me a cigarette. And it was funny because, 1 minute they might be slapping me and the next minute they'd be offering a cigarette. But I think I had a real special trip north in that this guy was a good soldier, and his job was just to get me up there. It wasn't to abuse me. In fact, he had to protect me from the local populace. 3 times moving up to that bamboo camp, he had to protect me from riots because they were trying to kill me.
The civilian population, whether they were in the city or out in the bush.
Yeah, it was mostly in the bush where I was, and just little villages, but there'd be 40, 50, 60 people out there trying to get me, and I got about 5 or 6 guards, and they had to take their AK-47s and just push the crowd back, and the truck driver actually had to just drive his truck through the crowd one time just to get to me and push the crowd back with his truck. And as he parted them, they threw me in the truck, and away we go. It was like something out of the old movies.
Were the people angry at Americans because of the bombing?
Well, they were angry because of the bombing, because I'm sure we'd killed some of their family, no question about it, or their friends who were the truck drivers who drove the trucks through.
Mm-hmm.
So, they were angry about that, and I can understand that. I'd be angry if somebody's bombing my town, countryside, too.
Right.
So I understood that, but I was sure glad that these guys were good soldiers and did their duty and took care of me.
What kind of emotions was going on from the time that you got the advice to raise your hands until they got you up there to Hanoi?
Well, it was shock immediately when they grabbed me and pulled everything off of me. Totally out of control, feeling totally out of control, knowing that I was probably going to be a POW unless I somehow figured out a way to escape before I got to Hanoi, which I was always looking for an opportunity. I got thrown off one time right away, and I've never talked a lot about this because it takes a little bit of time to explain it, but you always hope that there'd be some underground friendlies, that would try to help you get away, because that happened in Europe in World War II. So one night, the first night they ever had a riot trying to get to me, the guy that was guarding me took me through an underground tunnel out this little stable bamboo stable where they had me locked up, and these people were trying to knock down the walls and get into me, the door, and get to me. And he and I went through a little tunnel in the back of the stable, came out on the outside of the barn-like structure, and then we headed off to the next village. Well, I probably could have slugged him right then, but to be honest, this was like day 2 of my capture, or 3, maybe day 3. And I thought, well, gosh, this guy's a good guy. He's going to get me out of here, and we're going to get back to friendlies here. So I better stay with him a little bit. He may be a good guy because he was, acting friendly and telling me what I needed to do to get away.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, well, I better hang with him. Well, I hung with him, and we got over. He took me right into the militia guys over, half mile away or a mile away, and there wasn't any more opportunities like that. But, those were kind of the things that went through my head, well, from being somewhat optimistic to back down again, to being strafed and bombed by American air power 3 times on the way to Hanoi, which was pretty scary. I was praying that they'd be missing that day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then, excuse me. find them. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, sorry about that. I
Don't
thought I hit.
don't feel bad. I've had that. I've had the same kind of cough for the last month and a half. I can't get rid of it.
Well, I picked this cold up a week ago, and it's breaking up now, but it's making me cough. So, did a lot of praying. There were times when I thought that one time I thought they were going to shoot me out back of the hamlet there. They really just were trying to get me to go and jump across the ditch and go to the next rice field, but I thought they were going to shoot me and kick me in that ditch, and that's a pretty exciting time. So, there were times when I didn't think I was going to live for another hour, and then there were times when I felt like, I'm going to get through this thing, and I might even get a chance to escape. And worst case is I'm going to get to Hanoi and have to be a POW, which I didn't even want to think about. But there's guys been up there a couple of years, so maybe we'll be getting out soon.
What were your feelings toward your captors? Not only the ones that captured you when you come down, but through your whole experience. What kind of feelings did you have toward your captors?
Well, it varied. There's some of them. They were just the enemy soldiers doing their job, and I guess I'd be irritated by them, but it wasn't filled with hatred for them. Then there'd be times when they'd be trying to get us to bow down to them, and going to interrogators who were lying and trying to get you to do something, against your country or against your buddies or code of conduct, and that kind of stuff was just it was like dealing with a snake, when you're dealing with those kind of folks.
Mm-hmm.
So it really varied quite a bit. And then sometimes I won't say there was ever a time when anybody went out of their way to be kind, but there were a lot of times day to day when the turnkeys were kind of picked to be neutral. They were to be not completely neutral, but not to show animosity toward us at a very high rate. So, they get frustrated with us sometimes when we wouldn't move fast enough to suit them, but their job was not to harass us. They were just supposed to open the door, take us to empty the bucket that we had for a bathroom, or open the door and let us go get our food and go back in the room and that sort of thing. The guards, they had a gun. I don't know if they had bullets in it or not. They had bullets with them, but they had guns with bayonets with them. Maybe they had, magazine in the clip, but bullets in the clip. But they like to pick on us and act tough and all that kind of stuff, especially when we were behind bars and we couldn't reach out and grab them.
Mm-hmm.
They would act tough. And so sometimes it was just real hatred, going back and forth between us, and sometimes it was just live and let live.
You mentioned you mentioned
the
it.
Interrogators and the bad guys, I didn't have to deal much with the really sick interrogators. They had some torturers. They had interrogators and they had torturers.
Mm-hmm.
But there were some professional torturers in there that were sick people. I mean, psychologically sick. And there's just no way to describe how low they were as human beings.
Almost like animals.
Yep. Sick animals would be a good way to put it.
You mentioned
psychologically sick.
You mentioned you were bombed and strafed by our fellows. That had to be a weird, terrifying. I don't know how to describe it. That had to be an awful feeling.
Well, it was because it was a very helpless feeling because I'm tied up in the back of a truck. Let's see, twice I'm tied up in the back of a truck. No, once I'm tied up in the back of a truck and can't do anything. Once, at the last minute, the guards pushed me into a bomb shelter. And the first time it happened, just as the 105s rolled into their dive, they pointed to a foxhole alongside the trail or the highway there and told me to jump in it, and I did. I jumped in that foxhole, and they dropped those bombs about, 300 or 300 meters away, and when I climbed out, when they left, there was just red-hot shrapnel, just pieces laying all around my foxhole.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a feeling that day to see all that, observe it, watch all the gunners on the ground, the anti-aircraft gunners shooting at the 105s. The 105s nearly supersonic, coming down the bombing dive, dropping their bombs, watching them explode, smelling it, seeing the smoke, and then climbing out of that foxhole and seeing those red-hot things. And, of course, then the guards would all definitely slap me around a little bit then, because whenever something like that happened, they'd always had to get a few licks in. And then they'd kind of flip back around and be kind of normal, more neutral.
It almost sounds like it was. I know the feeling, because when we would get mortared or rocketed, there's no place to go. I mean,
right.
there's nothing you can do except lay there,
Right.
and just wait and hope, and yeah, it's almost like an out of body experience. You just know that this is it. It's over. So I'll just watch this thing from above. It's fantastic. When you got to the Hilton, and I want to tell our audiences, or our audience, I only wish that there was some way, somehow, that every American could feel, hear, taste, smell, touch, just for a second, the horror of war, so that everyone could understand. I know that's not realistic. I know that's just some far-fetched thinking on Espinlav's part, but I get so sad, and I've gotten so sad over the years, that people just don't know. And I've met people that absolutely doesn't know. Have you met individuals like that?
Oh yeah. I think that's one reason guys don't talk about war very much until they get real old, is that they know that nobody can really understand. I can tell this to you, but I don't have any words to tell you. I'll tell it to you, and, if what I experienced was 100%, then I can probably only describe it 60%, so why bother?
Right. Right. When you got to the Hanoi Hilton, did they separate you, or
Yeah, they separate us and put us out there were wash houses, maybe about 8 or 10 wash houses, little small rooms without a ceiling on them, but walls, so they always tried to keep us isolated so we couldn't see other POWs and communicate with those. And so they put me in just a kind of a nasty brick floor, scummy brick floor with had a little roof over the middle part, and they were back to back, so there was roof over, stuck out about 4 feet right in the middle part, over the area where there was a basin, and there was a pipe in there, and you just pull the plug out, and the water ran gravity into that basin, and that's where we washed our clothes and bodies and everything. But I was put in one of those, and I was put in leg irons and handcuffs, and blindfolded. They'd given me, of course, I had my flight suit. They'd given that back to me after I was captured. And so I laid out there for about 4 or 5 hours, and then just at dark, they came out and handed me a pair of black pajamas, and they unlocked my handcuffs and leg irons and told me to bathe. Of course, I hadn't bathed in 2 weeks, so I bathed off, and that felt good. It was a little chilly at November, at night. By the time it got dark, it was a little chilly. The sun had come through, I guess. Put on the pajamas, and they brought me a bowl of rice in a bowl of kind of a sewer green soup. We call it sewer greens, but it was kind of like an aquatic vegetable, kind of like lily pods, you know,
lily pads.
lilies that grow in the water, pondlet, and a little bit of not much greens in it, and I had a piece of fish head. So that was my meal that night. I never saw another fish head like that, but it was actually had some good meat on it. So I ate, and then I was taken into a interrogation room, and the other three guys that had ridden up on the truck with me, the Marine F4 crew and Ken Fisher, my buddy, they were already sitting there in their black pajamas, and so there were little like milking stools, real short stools there. And so I sat down, was about to sit down on one, and behind the table there, sitting on elevated chairs or benches, there was the interrogator and a turnkey on one side and a guard on the other, and then two armed guards behind us. And this guy, it was the most unreal experience you can imagine. Here I am, my first night in the Hanoi Hilton. The interrogator crosses his arms and leans back and looks very pompous. And this is what he said. And now, the fat is in the fire, huh? And it was all I could do just to keep from busting out laughing. If I hadn't been scared to death in my first night in the Hanoi Hilton, I'd have rolled in the floor. He had been learning American idioms, and this guy had, they all had their little projects they were working on, and his was to learn American idioms. So he was always throwing the idioms at us. But then he gave us a little lecture about the war and about our conduct and how we're going to be treated and how we had to obey all the camp rules and regulations. And then they locked us in our cell, a 6.5 by 7 foot cell. And we lived in that cell for the next 9 months. So it was dark and cold that night in that winter. It was a maximum security cell. It didn't have any walls touching any other cell. All it had was about a 2-foot walk space and airspace on the other side, and then another cell with its own walls. So it was a very much isolated experience there in the Hanoi Hilton. Those 9 months. We eventually got some contact, but it took a while to get contact with people and find out what was going on.
Was John McCain already there when you got there, or did he come later?
Yeah, he got there 11 days before me. He went down the 27th of October. But, John McCain was probably the most seriously injured guy of all the POWs who actually lived through those injuries and came home, because on his ejection, he was an out-of-control ejection also, but his was much worse. He hit the rails, I guess, of the canopy coming out and broke both arms and the one leg, and then he had this huge bruise on the other leg. And then they bayoneted him and beat him with the butts of their guns. So when they captured him there in Hanoi, he actually came down in Hanoi in a lake. So he almost died, and might have died if they hadn't found out his father was a 4-star admiral. But so they put him. Eventually, they found out that, and they put him in basically almost like a full body cast, and brought somebody to look after him, and that really made a difference. And then they moved him. After a couple months, they moved him over to the plantation camp, which was across town, and in with Colonel Bud Day, another guy, a major who actually took care of Bud. Bud had broken bones too, and this guy kind of nursed both of them back to health.
When you were there, you couldn't communicate with one another by voice, by talking?
No, we couldn't, because there were guards always out in the hallway, and if they caught you talking out loud, they would just call the turnkey and the officer in charge and open it up and take you out and beat you up and put you in solitary confinement, or maybe worse. So, you could do it, but it wasn't worth the risk. So what we had to do was find ways to communicate covertly. We stole a pencil at an interrogation and used some of our toilet paper, which was brown paper towels, and made a note and slipped it under some guy's desk. One guy would get the turnkey's attention, when we go to empty our bucket or get food, one guy gives attention, do something, get the turnkey all in a dither, and when that happened, it distracted him, and the other guy would slide a note under somebody's door.
Mm-hmm.
So that happened with us, and we did it for other people too. And then we had one window in our cell that went to the interior prison yard, and it was covered with a rattan mat. And I kept working on that rattan mat until I got it pushed back and could see into another cell that was 90 degrees away. And early in the morning, the shutters in that cell would be open, and then during their siesta, after lunch every day, it would be open. So I actually could get attention of the guy over there, and we started writing notes by spell out words on our hand. He could see my face and hand, and I could see from his waist up, but he could only see my neck up. But I had to put my hand up there and spell out words, and communicated with several different guys that were in that cell, and one of them happened to be Colonel Robbie Reisner, who was the senior ranking officer in the camp.
Mm.
And he'd already been there 2 years. So that was a pretty exciting experience to get contact with him.
Most people don't know, but even as POWs, there's still a chain of command, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Very, very clear and strong. And it's based on the date of rank. And you find out who the senior ranking person is. Are there any lieutenant colonels here? Well, yeah, there's one here. What's your date of rank? And so there are two of them here, and we'll see who's got the oldest date of rank, who pinned on his rank the first, and that becomes a senior ranking officer. There's no questions asked once that decision is sorted out, and that person takes command. I'm sure there were some that wish they hadn't been senior there, because they took the brunt of the battle for us.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, did they lean pretty heavy on the senior officers?
Yeah, they sure did. They picked on the senior guys most often and most ferociously. They thought if they could break them, everybody else would fall in line.
Mm-hmm.
But that never worked. But they tried it. Plus, they wanted to punish them for acting as the senior and giving orders and setting policies and all that sort of stuff, and helping us function as a military team, which made us stronger and made them weaker. So they wanted to break them from doing that.
The old cliche, "There's strength in numbers," is so true, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it really is. The one thing you don't want to do is be alone.
Mm-hmm.
In life, and especially in the military, and especially in combat.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're alone, you got nobody to help you bounce back. You got nobody to encourage you when you're thinking about giving up. You got nobody to help you sort through what's the right thing to do here. But when you got a teammate there, you got somebody to bounce ideas off, somebody to counsel you, somebody that you can give encouragement to. It's just all the difference in the world. And that's why we fought so hard, and we took such tremendous risks to try to communicate with each other, because it was really life and death, whether or not you communicated. It could be for some
Mm-hmm.
people.
Did you, during your captivity, these principles that's in your book, over the years, how did you retain those?
Well, I don't think I actually had them listed back then. They were just things that I just kind of kept piling up in my experience. And then when I came out and went to work, every now and then I'd be in a situation and I'd say, how should I handle this? And as I sorted through it, I actually had a tool or some wisdom to work with, a principle. And then as, the higher up I got in leadership, the more I saw that and, tried things and saw these things work. And then now as a leadership consultant for many, many years, I've just been able to help people use these principles, and so I know they work. And I don't think there's anything that not life-changing. They are life-changing, but there's so anything so radical in those 14 lessons. I think they are. I try to just make it clear that this is like a tool that works, and when you apply it in the right situation, it works every time. And if you don't apply it, you're going to be sad.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't guard your character, you'll be sad. If you don't know who you are and know yourself well, you're going to suffer. There are many examples of that. If you don't develop your people, you're a leader, and you don't develop your people, you're really going to have a second-rate organization.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't over-communicate your message as a leader, and when I say over-communicate, I don't mean like talk too much. I mean you have to say the same thing a lot of times over and over again for the message to get through.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to say it through multiple media. Nowadays, we've got email, texting, we've got signs and video and audio and just a lot of different ways that you can put the word out, and you have to use different media.
And still, there's some people that, there's still some people that don't get it with all the advantages we have today.
Oh, I know. It happens. It's still one of the biggest problems in life and work is communicating. Getting clarity. And one of the things is, you can't expect people to perform the way you want them to. You can't expect them to go execute and be accountable if you haven't clarified what's expected. So communication is so important to clarify the rules, the policies, the expectations, and then you have to follow up. And that's all about communication.
As the years went by, one turned into two, two into three. Was there ever a point that you lost hope?
I don't think so. If you lost hope, man, that's everything. Hope is everything. You got to hope. You got to hope that you're going to get out. But I think I had more than hope. I had belief, faith that I would get out. I think we all did. The alternative to believing that is not very good.
Mm-hmm.
And we're pretty. This particular group of people, these were not 18, 19-year-old kids that were POWs in the Hanoi system. These were experienced warriors. The average guy was about 30 or 31 years old when he was captured. Okay, now I just turned 24, so I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But the average guy is 30, 31 years old and a professional military guy. So they expect, we expected that, we're here and we're going to suffer and this is just the way it is. This is our lot in life right now. But someday our country's going to settle this thing and get us out of here, and we're going to walk out. And we need to be doing everything we can to minimize the enemy's exploitation of us while we're here.
How many
maximize the trouble for them?
How many POWs were there? Do you know?
Yeah, I do. Generally, there was the first 5 years, and there's kind of a cutoff because we stopped the bombing in early '68. So those who were there 5 years or longer are the mass of us, and that was about 330 or 340. And then the bombing started again in 1970. Basically in 72, there was few sorties flown in December '71, but basically 1972. So it's 4 years almost with no bombing up there, which wasn't encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
But then they started to get some more POWs, and when the B-52s came in at the end of the war on a big-time basis, like in November, December of 1972 with the Linebacker 2 operation, they knocked down a good many B-52s because we were sending a lot of them in there. And, there's 6 or 7 guys in each B-52, so all in all, they pulled in about another 150 or 60, so it ended up being about 600 of us.
And then Then came the day that you were all ordered into the yard or into the open, and someone told you that you were going to be coming home.
Yeah, they were required by the Paris Peace Accords to actually notify us within 48 hours of what the peace accords were regarding our release. And basically it said that we would be released over a period of 60 days in groups of about, I don't think it said 100, but it said in groups over a period over 60 days. So about every 2 weeks, they released a group of about 100. And that, but it would be in accordance with the U.S.'s final withdrawal from South Vietnam. In other words, they were kind of linked together there.
Mm-hmm.
So they told us that, and we had known that something had happened because half of us had been taken up to the Chinese border and put in a mountain camp, a really primitive place, as kind of a hidden away storehouse, you might say, in case somehow Hanoi got destroyed, they would still have us as hostages.
Mm.
And so we had returned about 3 or 4 days before the peace agreements were signed. They brought us, I guess they knew it was about to happen, they brought us back to Hanoi. And so, and they grouped us by shoot down and capture date, how they were going to release us, about 100 in each group. And we went back to the plantation where I'd never been before. McCain and some of the other guys had been there for 2 or 3 years, but I hadn't been there before. And they took us back there, probably about 100 of us, maybe 120. And we stayed there. And so we knew that the war was about over. We could see it in their eyes. There was fear in their eyes. It was kind of relief, but there was fear that, that from the bombings that had taken place there.
Mm-hmm.
And they had also opened the doors and let us walk around the compound together. So, John McCain and the rest of us were walking back and forth, getting our exercise every day, walking, 75 yards across the compound and back and up and down and back and that sort of thing. So, and they would lock us in our cells. I was in a cell with about 4 of the guys, and there were some big enough to hold 10 or 12, some for 3 or 4 or 5 like mine, and they would lock us back in our cells about 10 o'clock at night, which we'd never had that kind of freedom before. But so we knew the end was near.
When the bombing really became heavy, I'm just imagining that it was close to the prison.
Yeah, in the spring of 1972, some bombs came in pretty close, and we could feel the walls shake, and the concussions, were pretty strong. Then on Mother's Day, I think it was around May the 15th of 72, that's when they took half of us and put us up on the Chinese border. But we had windows way up high. The outside ones were covered over because the outside prison walls you couldn't see out. But the inside, you could get a little bit of the glimpse of the sky here and there, so you could see the red explosions from the surface-to-air missiles and the bombs going off, and it was pretty exciting, I'll tell you. That those 15-inch walls start shaking, and your whole floor starts shaking. That's pretty strong bombing from those B-52s going on.
Mm-hmm. So when you did come home, Colonel,
yeah,
and you stepped off of that plane, what was the emotions then?
George, we had become so emotionally flat, most of us had, because we didn't want to show much emotion. We didn't want to feel much emotion,
Mm-hmm.
other than anger, which we use sometimes to resist the enemy with. But we didn't want our emotions to get too high and get too optimistic that we're going to go home and then be left sitting there for another year or two.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't want to get too depressed that we're not going to go home, and depression's no fun and not a good place to go when you're in a POW camp. So most of us just leveled our emotions out till we just shut them down. And so until we actually took off that day and got airborne, and we could, in the airplane, you can feel when the wheels, the struts extend, and all of a sudden you're no longer on the ground. And there's a noise when that happens. Oh man, we started cheering and stomping the floor and yelling and screaming. And then when we got over international waters, the pilot came on the intercom and told us. We started yelling and screaming again because we were free for sure then. And then when we got to the Philippines and we got off the airplane and they had a red carpet there, and we were shocked because we had no idea that anybody would care other than our parents, families that know that we were out. But there were hundreds of people, maybe thousands of people there behind it was roped off so they couldn't get too close, but we could walk over and shake hands and hug people. And so it was very uplifting and exciting, but I don't know, it wasn't one of those things where, it was emotional, but it wasn't. It's like, okay, well, this is the way it's supposed to be, We knew we were going to go home someday, and this is even better than we thought.
When you mentioned that you just became flat, I think that best describes the way we all came home. Flat. I mean, we were just flat. I've never heard it explained like that, but that just describes it perfectly. When we came home, we were almost as if we were zombies sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Walking about.
Yeah.
And
I felt like it was. I started shutting my emotions down in combat when I lost my second roommate.
Mm-hmm.
Not second roommate in the war, but second guy who'd been a roommate either in flight school or in combat training or the war.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I just said, I've got a war to fight, and I don't need emotions right now of grief and all that. I just shut them down.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as a POW, I just cranked that vice down more and shut it down more. And so, to me, it was like a great protective strategy. To protect yourself was just to shut down and not have to deal with it. And in the short run, in the heat of the battle, it is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
But in the long run, it's not a healthy thing because you haven't dealt with the grief and the pain and the loss, and it just kind of sits there, and sooner or later it kind of comes back out. I think one way or another, it becomes a shackle to you. And I think one of the things that we realized the last couple of years in the war, they had actually improved our treatment to much more like live and let live. They stopped the torture. And a lot of this was because of the pressure put on by the people back here in the U.S. with the letter-writing campaigns to the Paris diplomats and the bracelets and all the PR that was given about POW treatment. But that 2 years really enabled us to kind of sit around and talk about what we'd gone through and to decompress with our buddies.
Mm-hmm.
So that really helped us avoid a lot of PTSD when we came home. If we'd come home 2 years earlier, I'm telling you, we would have really been a mess.
Yeah.
We would have been a mess. But that time, 2 years to kind of calm down and talk it through and be with our buddies that time really helped us a lot. But I was still pretty emotionally flat because it had worked so well for me. But it really didn't work well at home. I got married about a year and a half after we came back. I met my wife a year after we got back, got married about 6 or 8 months later. And, I've always been a good husband, a good father, but I was inhibited to a large degree along the way also from being as good as I could have been if I had been able to connect with my emotions and be more emotional with them and to feel their emotions. I couldn't feel their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Like I tried to deny that they should even have emotions, which is not very realistic.
No, I can relate. It was just a strange. It was I don't think, and I'm talking just for me. I don't think I ever, and I'm still not fully adjusted. I'm 64 years old now, but I don't think I I started to get adjusted for many, 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 many years after I was home. And
I think that's true. I think that's true.
yeah, and if you'd asked my wife of 45 years, she would tell you that I was a real basket case with a lot of these things.
You still are.
When we all come home, some of us didn't come home, as you said before we went on the air. Some come home maimed and crippled, but everyone that did come home came home scarred in some way, shape, or form.
Yep.
And so many, and so many of the men and women that are in uniform today that are coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq and other parts of the world where there's conflicts, they're coming back scarred. And people, if they just realize that you can't go through any more horrible thing than war and come back unscathed, I think it's impossible. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think everyone.
No, I think you're right. I was talking to one of my buddies who's probably one of the healthier, emotionally, mentally healthier guys I know, and talking to him a couple of years ago. He's 70, 71, between 70 and 75, somewhere in there. And I said, I finally realized that I did have some PTSD-like stuff. I did have some issues from this experience we had. And he said, oh, yeah, me too. He said, I've been in therapy for 2 years, which was shocking to me. But I said, well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that, because I said, I've kind of been dealing with some issues here, too. And most people would never know about it, but I think my family did,
I said years and years later, I said, when we came back to the world, it wasn't us that needed debriefed. It was the civilians back here that needed schooled, because wow, there was just a gap of no understanding between this side and that side, and then these guys over here are filled with anger and bitterness and all those other things, and these people over here act like they could care less, and that created some real problems with folks.
Well, it did, and they didn't have the same common frame of reference, and you couldn't understand each other, and I guess that's understandable. And one of the things that happened during that war was our culture changed. Society changed faster and more during that 6, 7 year, 8 year time period than any period in our history.
Mm-hmm.
To us who were in the POW camps, and we came home and found out some of the things that were going on, it was like, everything gone to hell in a handbasket.
Yep.
When I left, I'm from a little town in Georgia, and when I left, there was no drugs in the high schools and middle schools, and when I came home, 6 years later, there were drug problems in the middle schools.
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't believe it. It was just shocking how that could happen.
When I come back, June of 1968, I was in the air when Robert Kennedy was shot. Mm-hmm. The captain of the airplane came on, told us, and so on and so forth. But Martin Luther King was assassinated in April. Bobby Kennedy was killed. And when we come back in summer of 68, America was burning. It was on fire. Riots and burning the draft cards, burning the American flag, and rebellion. I mean, everywhere you look, rebellion. And guys that's coming back, long to come back to the world. We're hated, we're despised, we're not accepted. You're absolutely right, Colonel, because that is the time of history that this country changed, and I don't think it's ever changed so fast since then. Do you?
No,
No.
Yeah, the the demonstrations and the disregard for property and for other people's rights. We defended the anti-war people's right to protest.
Mm-hmm.
We told our communist captors, hey, they would try to make out, this is what's going on and try to make it bad. And we said, well, actually, no, it's good because it tells you the kind of people we are and the kind of government and society we have that we can protest. And but it's one thing to protest, but it's another thing to disrupt somebody else's rights who are just trying to go to school, and you go in and occupy the building so they can't go to class, or burn down the building, or whatever. That's a different animal. We couldn't understand that. We didn't fight for that.
Right. When did you write this book? I mean, how long did it take you to write it?
About 2 years. I finished the writing August the 1st of 2011. And the first proof copies for review copies came out in the fall of 2011. And then we had some pre-release hardback books in early 2012, and then it released nationally in the bookstores and online in May of 2012. So it hasn't really been out for a year yet.
And the name of that book, ladies and gentlemen, is Leading with Honor, and you can get it.
Yeah, tell them the subtitle too.
Let me grab it here real quick.
Oh, that's all right. I'll tell you what
Okay.
it is. The subtitle is it's Leading with Honor, and the subtitle is Leadership Lessons from the Hanoi Hilton.
And
that kind of explains what the book is really about.
And all those principles can be applied by most everyone.
Exactly. I had, so many people tell me that just it really helped them right where they are, right here and now with their situation in their life. And one lady told me she's a school teacher and a girls athletic coach, and how it had just changed the way she teaches and the way she coaches and the way she looks at things. Just a number of people said, well, that I was facing a situation, and I read that book, and it really, I knew what I needed to go do. So it's been very encouraging.
Wow, if we could get every so-called leader and every American to read that book and then just apply those principles, our nation could rise up and become so great, nothing could stop us.
I really believe that. I think that's what it's all about. Leading with honor means doing your duty, being responsible, being a good neighbor, being a good friend, being a good teammate, developing your people, bouncing back. When you get knocked down, you have to bounce back.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just a lot of lessons there and a lot of good stories. So the main thing about, I think, the book is the stories are so strong that you'll remember the lessons.
Yeah. Everyone that's listening and everyone that will listen later, please listen to what I'm saying. Get the book. Get the book. Leading with Honor. Make sure you get that book. And the foreword is by Senator McCain, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. He was nice enough to do that, and it really has helped, and I appreciate it a lot.
Leadership lessons from the Hanoi, Hanoi Hilton.
Yeah.
Wow. Powerful. So powerful. Colonel, I've kept you for almost 80 minutes. I thank you. I thank you so very much. Could you give us your website again?
Yes, it's you can just use leadingwithhonor.com. It'll roll into Freedom Star Media. They're the same place.
Okay.
You can do freedomstarmedia.com, or it might be simpler just leadingwithhonor.com. That's all you need. And then the Facebook is Leading with Honor Facebook, or Leon Lee Ellis. Both of those will get you to our Facebook. There's a lot of information on there. We have a blog about leadership. I'm writing on accountability right now. Got a new blog coming out next week. I had one last month on accountability. I think accountability is so important for our culture, and it's kind of been slipping here lately. And we need to be held accountable. We need to hold ourselves accountable. We need to hold others. So all that stuff you can access on the Leading with Honor website.
Everybody needs to read that one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't hear that word too much anymore. There was a website, and I wrote it down. I'm trying to find out where I put it, but the only thing I can remember sometimes is I forgot. What was it? Here it is. When I was reading all about you and different things today, you have a video on witnesstowar.org, or several videos.
Yeah, it is. Uh-huh. Yep.
And ladies and gentlemen, go to witnesstowar.org. And not only Colonel Ellis is there, but there is a whole ton of stuff there that you can watch and listen.
World War II stories, Korean War stories, Vietnam War stories.
And we all need to go there, lest we forget.
Yep.
Colonel Ellis.
Good. Well, George, thank you so much. I enjoyed being with you tonight.
I salute you, sir. And
I salute you.
Thank you so very, very much, and please stay in touch.
I'll do it.
Thank you, sir.
God bless you. Take care.
Bye-bye. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Colonel Lee Ellis, POW in North Viet Nam, shot down. Wow, what a tremendous story. Go get the book. The book is, let me pull it up here again, excuse me, Leading with Honor by Lee Ellis. And the subtitle is, my eyes are getting bad here, Learning Lessons from the Hanoi Hilton. I'll get it. And the foreword is written by Senator John McCain, who was also a prisoner at the same time period. Tremendous. If you listen to this live tonight, please tell other people to listen to it. It is tremendous. Very, very interesting. And I thank you from the depths of my heart, Colonel Ellis. Thank you for being on the show. I'll be back right after this. I don't know of anything better to play, music-wise, after listening to a man talk about such experiences as this. This, to me, says it all. And she's still the greatest nation on this planet Earth. My many, many thanks to Colonel Lee Ellis, who has written the book Leading with Honor, Leadership Lessons from the Hanoi Hilton. What a tremendous, tremendous guest that we had on tonight. And I hope that you pass the word to all your friends, your neighbors, your in-laws, your outlaws. Tap anybody on the shoulder that'll listen to you. Get a bullhorn, carrier pigeon, drop notes, whatever it takes. But tell them to tune in and listen to Colonel Lee Ellis, the author of Leading with Honor. And oh my goodness gracious sakes alive, Aunt Sally, how we need genuine leaders. I mean it. You know, I'm afraid that there are a lot of folks in our country that have been introduced to so-called leaders, and to them that is the only leader. That is the definition of a leader. Where if they would ever come in contact with a real, live leader, they would just be absolutely amazed. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, don't settle for anything less than true, honest leadership. And there are men and women out here today that have those qualities. Leading with Honor, Leadership Lessons from the Hanoi Hilton. Sometimes, as Colonel Ellis said, you have to lean into the pain. But regardless of what it costs, we must lead with honor. What a tremendous, tremendous night we've had here on the George Espinlaub Show. I am just thrilled that Colonel Ellis took the time to be with us. Well, we finally made the decision of what we're going to do with Unshackled. For you that are just listening for the first time or just tuned in, we have been searching for quite some time for a show, for a program that we could put on that would that we could uplift a ministry. And we found one. It's called Unshackled, and it comes from Pacific Garden Missions in Chicago, Illinois. I challenge you, Google that, Pacific Garden Missions. They've been around for a long, 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 long time. They've been around longer than me and longer than you, and they do good things. They have been ministering to the homeless, to battered women, to orphans, to those that are down and out, those that are in dire straits. They've been ministering to them for years and years and years and years. On any given night in the wintertime, they can have as many as and even more than 800 people coming for shelter. And they take every one of them. They feed them. Oh, they have a tremendous ministry. You can tour their facilities in Chicago, and every Saturday they do a live radio program, and they do a real dramatization of a true story. And if you're visiting there, you can at 3 o'clock they go into the studio and they watch the performance, the dramatization of that true story. They've been doing this since 1950, and they're still doing it the same way. They are still doing the drama in front of people, and they are taping it, and it is being aired around the world. We are delighted that we are going to be airing the radio show called Unshackled that is presented by the Pacific Garden Missions. We were all elated when we signed the station agreement document with the folks there at Pacific Gardens. Tremendous staff. Flossie McNeil and all the people. I thank you from the depths of my heart. I've said all that to say this. We're going to air the show. Let me get my paper right so I can make sure I do this. Tomorrow evening at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, just as if we were coming back on, we will air the show. It will really, really be a lot of fun, and it has a whole lot of meaning. And it's something like this.
She wasn't an orphan when she yearned to live in an orphanage, but going there changed her life. Don't miss the testimony of Shirley Duncan, another true dramatization coming soon on Unshackled.
Tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, right here on the Spreaker Network. We will be airing Unshackled, a true life. Remember, it's a true life dramatization of someone or some people, be it man, woman, boy, girl, family, a group of whatever, of people that are in dire strait, have been in dire strait, and they come out on the other side with total, absolute victory. I think you will enjoy it. For you that have listened to old-time radio, if you're as old as I am or older, this will be like going back in time. You know, listening to the Lone Ranger and the Green Shadow and the creaking door, Gunsmoke. You know, all them old time where we used to gather around the radio and listen to it. The dramatizations. It was a lot of fun. You will enjoy it. For you young people that have never heard anything like that, tune in tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, right here on the Spreaker Network for the first airing of the radio show called Unshackled. You will love it. Wow, we've had quite a night. I want to thank everyone. We've had a tremendous week. I mean that. We have had people listening and listening and listening and listening. You're good medicine for the soul. Believe me, you are. And it's all because of you that we will continue. We will strive to make our show even better. Without you, we might as well pack it up and put it in our wall locker because, you know, it just don't work. Thank you. Thank you for being there, and thank you for all of your support and for everything that you've done. Wow, what a night. What a week. That's all I can say. Remember, Monday night, Lou Ann Hunt, who was going to be our guest last night, but due to a complete power outage. You know, if you're going to have a power outage, don't half-step about it. Just have you a whole complete power outage. But that's what she had, and there was no way for her to get up with me. Her husband was flying home on a business trip, and she was completely alone. And she apologized. Her husband apologized, and trust me, folks, your apology is well accepted. And once we knew the reason, my goodness, stuff like that happens, and I hope it never happens again to you. Lou Ann Hunt, Monday night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, right here on the George Espinlaub Show. I know that you will enjoy it. Don't forget, go to Barnes & Noble, go to Amazon.com, type in, I'll get it, leadingwithhonor.com. It'll take you to Colonel Ellis's website. I'm saying, anyhow. It'll take you to Colonel Ellis's website where you can download a chapter of the book, Leading with Honor, and you can read all about it. And then, please take the time. Let me find it again. Where did I put it? Here it is. Take the time to go to this website because it is so very interesting. So very interesting. Go to Witness to War. Witness, T-O, war.org. Witness2war.org. And there you will see some videos of Colonel Ellis talking about his experiences. And not only that, but you will see videos and the accounts will be told of the Second World War, Korea, Vietnam, so on and so forth. If you really want to have a learning experience, go to witness2war.com. Get that book because every one of us needs to learn how to lead with honor. And these are lessons that come straight out of the Hanoi Hilton when Colonel Ellis was a POW in North Viet Nam. What else can I say? But it's been a tremendous night, a tremendous week, and we look forward to airing our first Unshackled program tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Oh boy, oh boy. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, everybody, for your emails. Please email us some more. We like getting emails. We're like little kids. George C.E. at Comcast.net. That's George C.E. at Comcast.net. Send them to us. Send us to us. We'll answer them, every single one of them. Ask us what you want. We'll answer you. To all my friends, down the street, around the corner, across this great nation, and around the world, thank you. Thank you from the depths of our heart. From my mom, from Charlie, Harvey, Miss Ernestine, Travis, and all the gang here at the Funny Farm Radio Studio. We thank you for allowing us to be part of your life just for a short while each evening. Until then, listen to me. There's a whole lot of love that comes to you from the Funny Farm. We mean that. No matter what you're going through, if the valley's deep, we'll be there with you. Until you climb up on top of the mountain, you can see the sun shining and the birds singing and the blue skies one more time. If we could make you smile just a little while tonight, then it was worth it. If we could make you as crazy as the rest of us around here, wow, that would be a real treat. But anyhow, if it's nighttime where you're at, have a good night. If it's already daytime where you're at, you have a great day. But until then, remember, Saturday, tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, right here on the Spreaker Network, we will be airing our first program entitled Unshackled by the Pacific Garden Missions out of Chicago, Illinois. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Until then, thank you, Colonel. I salute you, sir. Thank you for your service. And one more time, welcome home. Until then, this is George Espinlab saying good night. God just bless you so real good.